The man, the legend, the engineer extraordinaire. It is the article about Geordi. What has this man done for Star Trek? What has Star Trek done for this man? Let's find out as we dive in. I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 things you didn't know about Geordi LaForge. Number 10. Away teams and jealous pupils. After 20 years or thereabouts, Star Trek was returning to live-action television. What Gene Roddenberry had defined in a 16-page pitch in the 1960s was now a 48-page treatment for the show that had to follow. The Star Trek The Next Generation Writer's Director's Guide, aka the series Bible, sets out then as much as this new Trek was as what it was not, what had and had not been changed from the original. A similar process of transformation occurred to the character of Geordi from those first jots of ink to the screen. Down in writing as Lieutenant J.G. Geordi LaForge, there is much that is the same about the character in his initial biblical sketch. With all the sensitivity of the late 80s, lol, Geordi is described as birth defect blind, but with prosthetic super high-tech artificial eyes. He was already best friends with Data, however in this, Geordi was assigned the role of away mission regular, with no mention of the con or engineering. Perhaps the oddest point of difference in the lieutenant's extended bio, which thankfully didn't make it to air, is that his speciality was the Starship School for Children. Odd way to say teacher, but okay. Geordi would have equally to deal with a gaggle of pupils jealous of his vision abilities so marvelously beyond their own, another reason in retrospect that they shouldn't have allowed kids on board a bloody starship. Number 9. George LaForge. During the very beginnings of the creation process for Star Trek The Next Generation, Gene Roddenberry had expressed his desire to have a disabled crew member on board the Enterprise D, as stated in the 50-year mission the next 25 years. It was story editor, creative consultant David Gerrold, who had written for Star Trek the original series and Star Trek the animated series, who then prepared a memo listing various disabilities from which Roddenberry focused on blind. The first casting call for a Lieutenant Geordi LaForge, as given in Star Trek The Next Generation The Companion, further indicated that, with the help of a special prosthetic device, Jordis vision far surpasses anything the human eyes can see. The story behind the creation of Jordis Visor will be discussed now in a few minutes. In choosing a name for the character, David Gerrold looked to honour the memory of one fan of the original series in particular, George T. LaForge Jr., who had suffered from muscular dystrophy and sadly passed away in 1975, aged only 19. Gerrold suggested the name to Roddenberry, who thought it was a terrific idea. Our honoured fan also has his namesake in beta canon. In Gerrold's 1980 Star Trek novel The Galactic Whirlpool, there is an Admiral George LaForge, and in the 2016 Star Trek Enterprise novel Live by the Code by Christopher L. Bennett, Captain George LaForge features as one of Geordi's ancestors. Number 8. Baseball, vampires, and a Vulcan? The Star Trek The Next Generation companion gives LeVar Burton as the most recognisable name among the band of space newbies at the time of casting for The Next Generation. While there was that unknown Shakespearean actor, Burton had already been lauded for his role in the hugely successful series Roots and for Reading Rainbow. Before Burton got the part, however, there were a few other recognisable faces in the running for the role of Geordi LaForge. In a memo dated 13th of April 1987 that was never meant to be seen outside of Paramount, but that found its way onto the internet via Slice of Sci-Fi in 2006 and then to Trek Movie in 2010, can be seen a list of actors in consideration for roles in The Next Generation. Under Geordi, amongst others, is Baseball Hall of Famer and actor Reggie Jackson, given as the favourite for the part, as well as future vampire hunter Wesley Snipes, who told Collider in 2021 that he had been disappointed when he found out he hadn't got the Geordi role. There's a final name that immediately stands out in the memo, Tim Russ. He very nearly got to play Geordi too, it seems. In the 1995 documentary Star Trek Voyager Inside the New Adventure, Rick Berman stated, a good point of trivia for fans of Star Trek, Tim Russ was the first runner-up for the role of Geordi 8 years ago. Now it's sweet revenge for Russ. Still, that didn't stop the writers trying to get a joke into the Voyager scripts about this Geordi fact. Number 7. Shoot at Will, and Rker too. LeVar Burton currently holds joint first place for the most Star Trek episodes directed by a Star Trek cast member, 9 of Enterprise, 8 of Voyager, 10 of Deep Space Nine, and 2 of The Next Generation. That's 29 for who's counting. Only Jonathan Frakes is up there on the podium alongside him, with 28 episodes already directed, plus 1 upcoming confirmed for Season 5 of Star Trek Discovery. Of course, Frakes was behind and in front of the camera in both Star Trek First Contact and Star Trek Insurrection, so that does make 2 more in the directorial one-upmanship. Frakes already directed directed Star Trek Klingon the video game. In his first ever turn as director on Second Chances, Burton would have to shoot 2 versions of Rker Frakes through complex blue screen and stunt work, calling it trial by fire in the season 6 TNG DVD extra Bold New Directions. In that, Burton also largely credits the fine example of Jonathan Frakes for inspiring him to take on the directorial role in the first place. He would direct Frakes again in another Riker-heavy episode, The Pegasus. By his absence, Geordi took a more literal shot at Will Riker in the Star Trek Voyager's Death Wish. In the episode, we find out that the Q, Quinn, rescued Will Riker's wounded ancestor, Thaddeus Riker, from the front lines of the American Civil War. In the first draft of the script, however, it was Geordi's great-great-grandfather that was saved by Quinn. In that version, if Quinn hadn't intervened, and in a knowing wink to the real-life audition process, Geordi would never have been born, and Tuvok would have become chief engineer of the Enterprise D. Number 6. Save that one for Harry Kim. During the run of Star Trek The Next Generation, a storyline was pitched for Geordi LaForge that would have dramatically changed the character forever. As Jerry Taylor described it in the 50-year mission, The Next 25 Years, we wanted to make Geordi an alien. He was going to discover that his father was not who he thought he was, and that his mother had an almost Rosemary's Baby kind of thing and had been impregnated by an alien. As a result, Geordi was actually half alien, and now, at his present age, his people were coming back to get him. Of course, that plan never made it to screen, but if it sounds familiar, then it's because it's pretty much half of the premise for Identity Crisis, wherein a parasite from Tarkanan 3 transforms Geordi, non-permanently, into an alien. The idea is even more similar to what happened to Harry Kim in Favourite Son. In that episode, Kim's metamorphosis was a Teresian retroviral trick. Had they followed the initial script for Favourite Son, however, Kim would have discovered that he had, like the plans for Geordi, really been an alien all along, and would continue to be so. Number 5. He's a rainbow. Those who grew up in the United States, and undoubtedly a good number of those who didn't, will already be eminently familiar with LeVar Burton's iconic work as host of the children's educational TV series Reading Rainbow, which ran on the PBS network from 1983 until 2006. The show then became a veritable American institution, both it and Burton garnering a multitude of awards. The worlds of Reading Rainbow and Geordi LaForge have intersected on several occasions. As part of the first episode of Reading Rainbow's 6th season, aired in 1988 and entitled The Bionic Bunny Show, a name also fit for one of Data's poetry recitals, Burton gives viewers quite a detailed behind-the-scenes look at making Star Trek The Next Generation, then filming its first season. In the episode, audiences were also treated to the first ever Next Generation bloopers, including one where part of a clapperboard falls on a startled Geordi/Burton at the helm. In 2014, Burton launched a Kickstarter campaign to vastly expand the reach of his Reading Rainbow app, to bring Reading Rainbow back for every child everywhere. His fellow Star Trek actors turned out in force to help. Burton hosted a series of Reading Rainbow live fundraising events with his Next Generation co-stars, and Kate Mulgrew, Jerry Ryan and William Shatner as special guests. Star Trek Enterprise alum Seth MacFarlane also pledged to match $1 million of the whopping $5,408,916 ultimately raised by the Kickstarter. Number 4. Variations on a theme of Brahms. How is Leah? Picard asked Geordi in the alternate future vineyard of all good things. Just wonderful, busy as ever, the former Enterprise D engineer, now 25-ish years older, replies. Whilst no surname is given in the exchange, it's certainly more than implied that this particular Leah is Leah Brams, the prodigious warp field theorist we first met in Booby Trap. The novelization of All Good Things does, in fact, confirm this as such. After Geordi's highly inappropriate behaviour in Booby Trap, and then again in Galaxy's Child, one might have expected him to be dragged to the 24th century version of the HR department at least, not down the aisle. Nonetheless, and this despite the fact that Dr. Brams already had a husband in Galaxy's Child, the theme of Geordi and Leah seemingly inevitably going to get married is one of that recurs in beta canon. For example, Brams is given as Geordi's first wife in Star Trek Online, and in the Star Trek Countdown from 2009 comics, the pair are said to be married. Geordi's behaviour toward Dr. Brams clearly made LeVar Burton uncomfortable too, as he told the Shuttlepod show in 2023. As part of Geordi's canon, he had stalked this woman who designed the Enterprise engines, Dr. Leah Brams. He had created a hologram, and then she came on the ship and he met her. And it was like, wow, what a creepy frickin' thing to do. I didn't dig it at all. Thankfully, Geordi was about to get some much needed character development in the form of Star Trek Picard's 3rd season. Number 3. Shards of Night? When asked by a journalist from Gizmodo's IO9 why he felt the time was right to return to Star Trek, LeVar Burton replied, Terry Matalas, twice. Burton then went on to praise Matalas for his openness to input from the actors on their characters' development prior to Star Trek Picard's third season. In the Shuttlebot show, Burton stated that the only character request he'd made of Matalas for Star Trek Picard was to move away, as he put it, from the hackneyed trope of the engineer is awkward around women. Burton wanted Geordi to have a healthy relationship and a family. Matalas and the writers certainly provided him with that in the best possible way. In an interview for Entertainment Weekly, Matalas revealed that he and Burton even shared a tearful moment over Zoom when they first discussed Geordi's arc for the season. Art then followed life as Burton's daughter, Mika Burton, was cast to play Alandra LaForge. In March 2023, father and daughter appeared together on The View, hosted in part by none other than Whoopi Goldberg. 30-some years ago, Goldberg had given a baby Mika an embroidered cashmere blanket that came to be called Night Night. Symbolic, perhaps, of both the permeance and change that was balanced so brilliantly for all of the TNG characters in Picard's third season, Mika still holds on lovingly to what is now the Shards of Night. Number 2. Jordis Visor. The Star Trek The Next Generation Writer-Director's Guide goes into some detail about what was at that point referred to as Geordi's unusual prosthetic device, which allowed him to perform some of the functions of a tricorder by extending his vision well beyond the visible spectrum into the ultraviolet and the infrared. The Guide Bible also mentions that there were even plans for Geordi to get a replacement set of human eyes in one episode, which would end up being a huge disappointment for him. According to The Next Generation Companion, to create Geordi's visor, visual instrument and sensory organ replacement, as we know it today, the art department worked for about 3 months on different designs and prototypes without much success. Michael Okuda then brought in a plastic hair barrette, which, repurposed to fit, did the job surprisingly well for a lot less money. In The Next Generation Season 1 DVD extra, The Making of a Legend, LeVar Burton also gives the visor acronym as Visual Input Sensory Optical Reflector, which is perhaps a little better than its actual name. Geordi's visor has also directly inspired real-world technology aimed to assist those with visual impairments, most notably Enhanced Vision's NASA research Geordi Joint Optical Reflective Display. The device, still on sale, is a wearable digital magnifier that uses an HD camera for distance, intermediate, and near viewing for people with low vision, and has an HDMI input for people watching TV. Number 1. The Day Mars Stood Still. The character we met at the beginnings of the 25th century was markedly changed, yet still the same Geordi. Now a Commodore, so outranking Rker, he was also a family man, more cautious, understandably less willing to charge headlong into the fray. Plus, he'd spent the last 20 years on one hell of a side project. For LeVar Burton, Bounty, from Star Trek Picard's third season, was the first time he had played LaForge since Star Trek Nemesis, although he did lend his voice to Star Trek Online in 2017 for the featured episode Beyond the Nexus, and then again in the game's Season 14. Geordi was also a main player in the beta canon-ish works in the run-up to one major galactic event for 2 universes, the Romulan Hobus supernova. All the way back in 2009, Geordi appeared in Star Trek Countdown, the 4-part comic book prequel series set to J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, set in 2387. In it, Geordi has resigned from Starfleet and taken to Starship design, most notably of the jellyfish of later Spock and Red Matter fame. In case you didn't get the ticking clock of impending doom hint the first time, another pre-Nova prequel comic series entitled Countdown was released in 2019 and 2020, this time prefaced by Star Trek Picard. In this series, Geordi has the Herculean task of heading up construction of the Romulan evacuation fleet at Utopia Planitia shipyards. This fact is then picked up in Una McCormack's 2020 novel Star Trek Picard, The Last Best Hope, whereupon Mars is set aflame by the rogue synths. That's everything for our list, folks. Was there anything that blew your mind or anything that you were like, nah, I already knew that? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much to the wonderful Jack Kaidy for writing the article upon which this is based. You can catch that over on whatculture.com. I have been Sean Ferrick. You can catch me on the various socials just by typing in my name. And don't forget to follow TrekCulture on the various socials as well. Folks, we are so close to 300,000 subscribers. If you, my lovely friends, would be so kind as to subscribe to the channel and also share it when you can, that makes such a huge difference. So thank you so much to everyone who has already done that, and thank you so much who is doing that now. Yous are all bleeding awesome. Look after yourselves until I'm talking to you again. Remember, you are wonderful, you are amazing. There is only one of you, so treat it well. Thanks very much, folks.